the scorching heart of the African savanna, under a blazing sun that turned the ground into cracked clay. An old elephant named Kibo was running for his life. His massive body, once the pride of the herd, now moved with heavy, painful steps. Deep wrinkles covered his gray skin, and his left tusk was broken from years of battles long past. Behind him, a pack of 7 hyenas followed like shadows. Their leader, a scarred female with glowing yellow eyes, didn't rush. She knew patience won meals. Kibo's herd had scattered during the long drought. He was alone now, weak from hunger and thirst. Every breath burned in his chest. The hyenas snapped at his heels, taking small bites on his back legs where the skin was thinner. Blood trickled down his sides. He ran until his legs shook. Then, near a dry riverbed, Kibo stopped. He lowered his huge head, ears drooping. The old bull had given up. His eyes closed slowly as the hyenas circled closer, laughing in their eerie whooping calls. It seemed the end had come for the gentle giant. The hyenas moved in. One brave one jumped onto Kibo's back and bit hard. Others tore at his legs and trunk. Kibo didn't fight back. His massive body trembled but stayed still. He had led his family through floods and lion attacks for over 50 years. He had protected calves and charged enemies without fear. But age and the cruel drought had taken everything. No strength left in his trunk, no power in his legs. The old elephant simply stood there, waiting for the pain to end. The hyenas grew bolder, their laughs echoing across the empty plains. In the distance, vultures began circling overhead, ready for the feast. Nature's rule was clear. The weak fall so the strong survive. Kibo had accepted his fate. The savanna fell silent except for the sound of tearing flesh and the hyenas' excited cries. It looked like the end of a legend. As the bites grew deeper, something stirred deep inside Kibo. A memory flashed years ago when he was young, strong. He had saved a lost baby rhino from a flooding river. The mother rhino had never forgotten. That tiny act of kindness had created a bond between their kinds. Kibo's eyes flickered open for a moment. He let out a weak, low rumble, a final call that carried across the dry land. It was not a cry of pain, but a quiet goodbye mixed with hope. The hyenas laughed louder, thinking victory was theirs. But the savanna has ears everywhere. Far away, near a hidden waterhole, a group of powerful rhinos heard the faint rumble. The old mother rhino, now a grandmother herself, lifted her head. She recognized that voice, the one who had once saved her child. Without hesitation, she charged forward, her thick horn gleaming. 4 other rhinos followed, their heavy feet pounding the ground like thunder. The ground shook. Dust clouds rose high into the sky. The hyenas froze mid-bite as the rhinos burst over the hill like living tanks. The lead rhino, the same one Kibo had saved long ago, turned her head and slammed straight into the pack. Her horn caught one hyena and sent it flying through the air. The others scattered in panic, their laughter turning into terrified yelps. Kibo lifted his head slowly, eyes widening in disbelief. The rhinos formed a protective circle around him, snorting and stamping. One hyena tried to sneak back for a final bite, but a rhino charged again, crushing bones with a single powerful move. The pack that had been so confident just moments ago now ran for their lives, tails between their legs. The impossible was happening right before Kibo's eyes. Help had come from the unlikeliest friends, not elephants, but the armored giants of the plains. The rhinos stayed with Kibo for hours. They used their bodies to shield him from the sun and guided him slowly to a small pool of water they knew nearby. Kibo drank deeply for the first time in days. His strength began to return, little by little. The old mother rhino gently touched her horn to his. Trunk, a quiet thank you from years ago, now returned. In the animal kingdom, kindness had created a bond stronger than any fence or fear. As the sun set in a blaze of orange and red, Kibo stood taller. The vultures flew away disappointed. The hyenas were gone, searching for easier prey. From that day on, stories spread across the savanna. Animals whispered about the old elephant who had surrendered to death, but rose again because of an old debt of friendship. Kibo eventually found a small new herd and lived several more peaceful years, teaching the young ones that even in the harshest wilderness, help can come when you least expect it. And the rhinos, they roamed proudly, knowing that true strength isn't just in muscles or tusks, it's in remembering who stood by you when times were tough. Never underestimate the power of a single kind act. In the wild, it can bring the impossible back to life. Weeks turned into months on the vast African savanna. Kibo, the old elephant, slowly gained his strength beside the watering hole the rhinos had shown him. The water was cool and clear, hidden between two rocky hills where the drought couldn't reach. Every morning, the grandmother rhino, whom the animals now called Old Guardian, would stand beside him, gently nudging his side with her horn as if to say, "You're not alone anymore." The other rhinos in her group became his protectors too. They formed a strange but powerful family. The massive gray elephant with his broken tusk walking slowly alongside the armored rhinos with their sharp horns. When hyenas dared to return, drawn by the scent of old blood, the rhinos would charge without hesitation. Their thunderous footsteps sent the pack fleeing every single time. Kibo no longer needed to run. He simply stood tall while his unlikely friends handled the danger. Word of the rescue spread quietly through the animal kingdom. Zebras whispered about it while grazing. Giraffes stretched their long necks to watch from far. Even the lions kept their distance, respecting the new balance that had formed. In the wild, where every day is a fight for survival, this friendship between elephant and rhino became something legendary, a reminder that old debts of kindness never truly fade. One golden evening, as the sun painted the sky in fiery orange, Kibo felt strong enough to move again. He lifted his trunk high and let out a deep rumbling call that echoed across the plains. It wasn't a cry of pain this time. It was a song of gratitude and renewed life. The old guardian rhino answered with a snort and a gentle bump of her head against his leg. In that moment, both understood. The impossible had not just happened once. It had created something lasting. Years passed, and the savanna slowly healed as rains finally returned. Green grass grew tall, and water holes filled once more. Kibo found a small wandering herd of younger elephants who accepted the old bull as their wise elder. He taught them the hidden paths he had learned during his lonely struggle, and he shared the story of the day death came knocking only to be chased away by thunder on four legs. The rhinos stayed close. Their two groups often traveled together, sharing shade under acacia trees and watching over each other's young. The baby elephants played near the rhino calves, learning that strength comes in many forms, sometimes in a trunk that can spray water like a fountain, sometimes in a horn that can move mountains. Kibo lived 3 more peaceful years, his body growing old but his spirit shining brighter than ever. On his final day, he lay down under a wide tree as the sun set. The old guardian rhino stood vigil beside him, refusing to leave even as night fell. She stayed until his breathing slowed and finally stopped, peaceful at last. The next morning, the rhinos gathered around his body, just as they had protected him from the hyenas years before. They guarded him until the herd arrived to pay their respects. Number, Croach. From that day forward, whenever elephants and rhinos met on the plains, they would pause, touch trunks to horns, and remember the old bull who had surrendered to the hyenas but rose again because one small act of kindness from long ago had come full circle. The savanna taught its harshest lesson through this miracle. Never underestimate the power of friendship. Even when you have surrendered and the shadows close in, help can come from the most unexpected places. A single kind act can echo for generations, turning certain death into a story of hope that the whole wild world will never forget. And so, the impossible became legend, a tale told under starry skies, reminding every creature, big or small, that in the end, it's not always the strongest who survive. It's the ones who never forget to care. Many dry seasons came and went after Kibo's peaceful passing. The savanna changed with the years, rivers swelled again, trees grew taller, and new generations, animals were born under the same blazing sun. Yet one story never faded. Mothers told it to their calves at dusk. Young lions heard it whispered by the wind. Even the cheeky meerkats repeated it while standing guard on their mounds. They called it the day the elephant rose. In the heart of it all stood a young bull elephant named Mosey, Kibo's grandson. He had never met his grandfather, but he carried the same deep wrinkles and wise eyes. Mosey grew up hearing how the old one had surrendered to the hyenas, only for thunder to arrive on 4 thick legs. One fierce afternoon, trouble found Mosey. A sudden grass fire sparked by lightning raced across the plains. Smoke filled the air. Animals panicked and ran. Mosey's small herd got separated in the chaos. The young bull found himself trapped on a rocky outcrop, flames licking at the dry bushes below. His trunk burned from the heat. His legs trembled with fear. The fire moved fast, too fast. Hyenas appeared again, the same cunning. Pack, or perhaps their children. They circled the base of the rocks, laughing their wild laughs, waiting for the fire or exhaustion to finish the job. Mosey lowered his head, just like his grandfather once had. He felt the same heavy surrender pulling at him. The end seemed certain. But then, the ground began to shake. From the smoke and flames burst a massive shape of fully grown rhino, horns sharp and eyes fierce. It was one of the old guardian's own grandchildren. Behind him charged 3 more rhinos, their heavy bodies cutting through the fire like living shields. They had remembered the old stories. They had remembered the bond. The rhinos slammed into the flames, creating a path of trampled earth and cleared brush. One rhino positioned itself beside Mosey, using its powerful body to block the worst of the heat. Another charged straight at the hyenas, scattering them in terror once more. The pack fled howling into the smoke, their laughter silenced by the thunder of hooves. Mosey lifted his trunk in amazement. The impossible had happened again. The rhinos guided him safely through the burning grass to a wide river where the fire could not follow. There, under cooling waters and shady trees, the young elephant drank and rested while the rhinos stood watch, just as their ancestors had done for Kibo. That night, as stars filled the sky and the fire burned itself out far away, Mosey stood beside the young rhino leader. They touched trunk to horn in the same gentle way their grandparents once had. The bond had not broken. It had grown stronger, passed down through blood and memory. From that moment, the two groups traveled together more than ever. Elephants and rhinos shared water holes, warned each other of dangers, and protected the young ones side by side. Other animals watched in quiet wonder. Zebras and giraffes spoke of the Thunder Friends. Even the wise old baobab trees seemed to rustle their leaves in approval. Years later, when Mosey became a respected, with his own broken tusk, he would gather the calves around him at sunset and tell the full story. Your great-grandfather Kibo once surrendered to the hyenas. He thought his time was over, but because he had once helped a small rhino long ago, the impossible returned when he needed it most, and that kindness kept returning, to me, and now to you. The calves would listen with wide eyes, learning the greatest lesson the savanna could teach: never forget a kindness. Never give up, even when the hyenas laugh and the world grows dark, because the impossible can happen not through magic, but through the quiet power of remembering who stood by you. And so the legend of the old elephant who surrendered, but then rose again, lived on. It became more than a story. It became a promise whispered across the plains. In the wild, true strength is not only tusks or horns. It is the friendships we build when times are good, so they can save us when times turn bad. The circle of kindness turned once more endless, unbreakable, and beautifully alive under the African sky. Many more seasons passed, and the African savanna bloomed and faded in its endless rhythm. The story of Kibo and the rhinos had become part of the land itself. Elders told it around watering holes. Young ones acted it out in playful charges. Even the wind seemed to carry the tale, rustling through the tall grass like a gentle reminder. One quiet dawn, a small elephant calf named Zara stood at the edge of a misty river. She was Kibo's great-great-granddaughter, tiny, curious, with bright eyes and ears that flapped like wings when she was excited. Her herd was resting nearby, but Zara had wandered a little too far, chasing a bright butterfly. She didn't notice the danger until it was too late. A lone crocodile slipped silently from the water, its jaws opening wide. Zara froze in terror, her small legs trembling. She tried to call for help, but only a weak squeak came out. The crocodile lunged. At that exact moment, a young rhino barely older than Zara burst from the bushes. It was the great-grandson of the old guardian. He had been drinking upstream and heard the tiny cry. Without thinking, he lowered his head and charged, slamming his horn into the crocodile's side with surprising power for his age. The crocodile tumbled back into the river with a splash, disappearing beneath the surface. Zara stood shaking, safe but scared. The young rhino gently nudged her with his nose, just as his ancestors had done for Kibo long ago. "Come," he seemed to say with his calm eyes. "I'll walk you back." Together, the little elephant and the little rhino walked side by side through the golden grass. Zara's herd welcomed the rhino with happy rumbles. The rhinos nearby answered with soft snorts. Once again, the two families stood together not because they had to, but because the bond had become natural, like breathing. As the years rolled on, the friendship between elephants and rhinos grew. Savanna respected and admired. When droughts returned, they shared the last waterholes. When lions grew bold, they formed protective circles around the young. When floods came, they helped each other reach higher ground. The hyenas still laughed in the distance, but they had learned to stay far away from any elephant that walked with a rhino shadow. Old elephants would gather the calves at sunset and say, "Long ago, our ancestor Kibo had already surrendered to the hyenas. He thought his story was over. But because he once showed kindness to a rhino, the impossible happened. That kindness came back when he needed it most. And it kept coming back to his children, to their children, and now to you." The calves would listen, wide-eyed, flapping their ears. They learned that real strength isn't just having big tusks or heavy horns. Real strength is remembering who helped you and being ready to help in return. Even today, if you walk quietly across the African plains at twilight, you might see them, a line of gray elephants moving slowly beside a group of armored rhinos. They walk together, protecting one another, sharing the same shade in the same sky. The old elephant who surrendered never truly disappeared. His spirit lives on in every gentle nudge of a rhino horn against an elephant trunk, in every shared watering hole, in every rescue that happens when hope seems lost. The impossible didn't happen just once. It became a promise that repeats with every new generation. So the next time you feel alone, or scared, or ready to give up, remember Kibo. Remember that kindness has a way of traveling through time. It waits quietly. It remembers. And when you need it most, it can charge out of the bushes like thunder on four legs and turn certain defeat into a brand new beginning. Because in this wild world, the circle of kindness never breaks. It only grows stronger with every heart that chooses to care. Many years after the little calf Zara and the young rhino first met, the savanna had changed once more. Rains had been kind, and the land was rich with tall grass and blooming acacia trees. A new generation of elephants and rhinos now roamed together as true family. Among them walked an old, wise elephant named Nia, Zara's mother, and Kibo's great-great-granddaughter. Her tusks were long and strong, but her eyes carried the same gentle wisdom that had once belonged to the old bull who surrendered to the hyenas. One peaceful evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in deep oranges and purples, Nia stood on a gentle hill overlooking the plains. She was tired. Age had slowed her steps, and her breath came heavier than before. The herd grazed quietly below, but Nia chose to stay on the hill, watching the golden light fade. Suddenly, danger returned. A large pride of lions, bolder than usual after a long hunt, spotted the old elephant alone on the hill. They moved in silently, golden bodies low in the grass. Eyes gleamed with hunger. Nia saw them too late. She tried to trumpet for help, but her voice was weak. Her legs felt heavy. For a moment, the old fear returned, the same feeling Kibo must have felt when the hyenas closed in. She lowered her head slowly. The circle of lions tightened. It seemed the story might end here, under this beautiful sunset. But the savanna never forgets its promises. The ground began to tremble. From the valley below, a powerful group of rhinos charged up the hill like living thunder. Leading them was the old rhino patriarch, the same one who had saved Zara years earlier, now graying around the edges but still strong as stone. Behind him came younger rhinos, their horns sharp and eyes fierce. They crashed into the lion pride with unstoppable force. Lions scattered in panic, roaring in surprise and fear. One rhino stood shoulder to shoulder with Nia, shielding her with its massive body, while the others drove the lions away into the long grass. The pride fled, without a single kill, their tails low in defeat. Nia lifted her trunk and gently touched the old rhino's horn. In that quiet touch, the entire history spoke from Kibo's darkest day to this golden sunset. The bond had crossed generations, surviving droughts, fires, and time itself. As night fell and stars filled the African sky, the elephants and rhinos gathered together under the wide baobab trees. The young ones played safely while the elders rested side by side. Nia stood tall once more, her strength returning not from her body, but from the warmth of old friendship. That night she told the full story to the calves one last time. Long ago, our ancestor Kibo had already surrendered to the hyenas. He thought his time on this earth was finished. But because he once helped a small rhino when no one was watching, the impossible came rushing back to save him. That single kind act created a chain that has protected us ever since, through fire, through flood, through lions and hyenas. The calves listened in wonder, their big ears flapping softly. Nia smiled with her eyes and added, "Remember this always. Never be too quick to surrender. And never forget those who show you kindness. Because one day, when you feel weakest, that kindness may return like thunder on four legs and give you another sunrise." Years later, when Nia finally lay down for her last rest, the rhinos stood guard around her, just as they had for Kibo. No hyena or lion dared come near. The herd mourned quietly, but they celebrated too because her life had been proof that the circle remained unbroken. Today, if you are lucky enough to walk the African savanna at dawn or dusk, you may still see them. Elephants and rhinos moving together across the golden plains. They walk as one, protecting each other, sharing water and shade, living the legend every single day. The old elephant who surrendered to the hyenas never truly left. His story became the wind in the grass. His kindness became the bond between two mighty kinds. His impossible rescue became a promise passed from trunk to horn, from generation to generation. And so the story continues not just as legend, but as living truth. In the wild heart of Africa, the message remains simple and powerful for every creature that listens. When darkness closes in and you feel ready to give up, hold on just a little longer. Because somewhere out there, an old kindness is still running toward you. It may arrive on heavy feet and with thunder in its steps. It may look nothing like you expected, but it will come. And when it does, the impossible will happen once again. The circle of kindness turns forever. Never stop believing in it. Many more seasons turned, and the savanna grew even richer under kind rains. The bond between elephants and rhinos had become part of the land's heartbeat. Young animals of every kind now grew up hearing the tale of the old elephant who surrendered to the hyenas and how thunder on four legs brought back to life. The story was no longer just for elephants and rhinos. It belonged to the entire savanna. One bright morning, a curious young elephant named Kale, the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson of Kibo, stood at the edge of a wide watering hole. He was strong and playful, but today he felt restless. While the herd drank peacefully, Kale wandered toward a thick patch of bushes, chasing the sound of rustling leaves. He didn't see the trap until it was too late. A group of poachers had hidden a deep pit, covered with branches and grass. Kale stepped forward and the ground gave way. He fell with a heavy crash, landing at the bottom of the dark hole. Dust rose around him. His trunk flailed, but the walls were too steep and slippery. Panic filled his eyes. He trumpeted loudly for help, but the sound echoed uselessly inside the pit. Above, the poachers laughed quietly, waiting with ropes and guns. They had come for ivory and would take whatever they could get. Kale's heart pounded with fear. For the first time in his young life, he felt completely helpless, just like his ancient ancestor Kibo had once felt when the hyenas closed in. He lowered his head against the dirt wall and closed his eyes. The fight seemed over before it had truly begun. But the savanna was listening. The ground began to shake once more. A powerful rhino, a direct descendant of the old guardian, heard Kale's desperate call. He charged through the bushes with his family right behind him. Their heavy feet pounded like drums of war. The rhinos reached the pit in moments. With raw power and determination, they used their horns and massive bodies to break the edges of the trap. Dirt flew everywhere. One rhino leaned dangerously close to the edge, extending his strong neck so Kale could wrap his trunk around it. Together, with mighty heaves and deep grunts, they pulled the young elephant free. The poachers froze in shock. They had never seen anything like this, wild animals working as one to rescue their own. When the rhinos turned toward them, horns lowered and eyes blazing, the men dropped their tools and ran for their lives, disappearing into the tall grass. Kale stood shaking on solid ground, covered in dust but alive. He touched his trunk gently to the lead rhino's horn in silent thanks. The circle had turned again. News of the rescue spread faster than wildfire across the plains. Zebras, giraffes, antelope, and even the shy bush babies spoke of it in awe. The Thunder Friends had saved one of their own from humans, the most dangerous hunters of all. From that day forward, the elephants and rhinos became even more watchful. They warned each other of poacher signs. They guarded the young together. They shared every watering hole as true family. The bond that started with one small act of kindness long ago had grown into something unbreakable, protecting them against both nature's cruelty and human greed. Kale grew into a fine young bull. Every evening when the sun painted the sky red and gold, he would stand on the same hill where his ancestor Nia once stood. He would tell the calves the full story from Kibo's surrender to the hyenas, through fires and lions and pits, all the way to this latest rescue. And he always ended with the same powerful words. Our great ancestor Kibo had already given up. The hyenas were laughing over him. But because he once helped a rhino when no one was watching, the impossible kept happening again and again. Kindness does not die. It travels through time. It waits. And when darkness comes, it charges back with thunder and horns to bring light once more. The calves would flap their ears and trumpet softly, promising to remember. Today, if you travel deep into the African savanna and sit quietly at twilight, you may still see them long lines of gray elephants walking shoulder to shoulder with powerful rhinos. They move as one family, protecting each other across generations. The old elephant who surrendered never truly left us. His moment of weakness became the birthplace of incredible strength. His single kind act became a chain of miracles that still saves lives today. So whenever life feels too heavy, whenever you feel surrounded by hyenas, trapped in a pit, or ready to surrender, remember this story. Hold on, stay kind, help when you can, even in small ways, because somewhere in the future, that kindness is already running toward someone who needs it. It may arrive as thunder on four legs. It may look nothing like you expect, but it will come, and the impossible will happen once again. The circle of kindness is eternal. It began with one old elephant on a dry riverbed, and it will keep turning as long as hearts remember to care. Never stop believing in it. Decades flowed like the great rivers after the rains. The savanna had seen many cycles of drought and plenty, but the bond between elephants and rhinos stood stronger than ever. Their two families had become one living legend that even as baobab trees seemed to whisper about. A young female elephant named Lara, Kale's daughter, and the latest carrier of Kibo's blood, was born during a golden sunrise. From her first steps, she heard the story of the old elephant who surrendered to the hyenas and how the impossible rescue had echoed through time. She grew up playing beside rhino calves, learning to share shade and water as naturally as breathing. One stormy afternoon, danger came in a new form. Heavy rains had turned the plains into slippery mud. Leora, now a curious teenager, slipped while crossing a swollen river. The strong current swept her downstream toward a dangerous waterfall. She trumpeted in panic, her trunk thrashing against the rushing water. Rocks scraped her sides. The roar of the falls grew louder every second. On the riverbank, a young rhino named Thorn, descendant of the same line that had saved so many before, heard her cry. Without hesitation, he plunged into the violent water. His heavy body fought the current like an armored ship. Other rhinos followed, forming a living chain along the edge. Thorn reached Lyra just as the waterfall's edge appeared. He pushed his strong shoulder beneath her, using all his power to slow her down. Together, with the help of the chain of rhinos, they guided her toward a calm pool near the shore. Exhausted and shaking, Liara crawled onto dry land. She wrapped her trunk gently around Thorn's neck in deep gratitude. The impossible had happened again, this time against the raw power of nature itself. That evening, as the storm clouds parted and stars appeared, Liara and Thorn stood together under the moonlight. The elders from both families gathered around them. In the soft glow, Liara spoke clearly to all the young ones watching. My ancestor Kibo once stood still while hyenas laughed over him. He had surrendered, but one old kindness from long ago brought thunder and horns to save him. That same kindness saved my father from a pit, and he has saved me from the river. It never ends. Thorn touched his horn lightly to her trunk and added in his deep, steady way, "We do not forget. We do not abandon. That is our strength." As the years continued their gentle dance, the friendship between the two mighty kinds became a beacon across the savanna. Other animals sought their protection during hard times. Birds nested safely on their backs. Antelope grazed close by, knowing no predator would dare challenge the combined power of trunk and horn. Poachers grew fewer in that region, warned away by tales of animals that fought together like one unstoppable force. The land itself seemed to heal faster because of the harmony the elephants and rhinos kept alive. When Leora became an elder with her own calves, she would lead the herd to the same dry riverbed where Kibo had once surrendered so many generations ago. There, under the same blazing sun, she would tell the story again. The old elephant had already given up. The hyenas, their meal was certain. But because he once helped a small rhino, the impossible charged back to life. And that miracle has kept happening through lions, through fire, through traps, through floods, and through every dark moment that tried to end us. The young calves would listen with wide, shining eyes, their trunks and small horns touching in quiet promise. And so the circle keeps turning. Today, deep in the wild heart of Africa, if you walk softly at twilight, you can still see them long, majestic lines of elephants and rhinos moving together across the golden plains. They share the same paths, the same waterholes, and the same quiet strength born from one single act of kindness long ago. The old elephant who surrendered to the hyenas never truly disappeared. His moment of weakness became the seed of unbreakable friendship. His single kind act became a river of rescues that still flows today. His story became the wind that carries hope across the savanna. Whenever you, surrounded by shadows, when life's hyenas laugh loudest and surrender feels easier than fighting, remember Kibo. Hold on. Stay kind. Help when you can, no matter how small the act seems. Because that kindness is already traveling through time. One day, when you need it most, it will come running on heavy feet, with thunder in its steps and horns held high. It may not look like what you expect, but it will come, and the impossible will happen once more. The circle of kindness is eternal. It began with one tired old elephant on a dry riverbed, and it will keep turning forever, as long as hearts remember to care. This is the story of the old elephant who surrendered, but then the impossible happened. And because of it, hope still walks the savanna today. Time moved gently across the savanna like the shadow of a passing cloud. Leora, now an old and respected matriarch, walked more slowly, her once bright eyes softened by wisdom and many seasons. Her herd had grown large and strong. Rhinos remained their constant companions. The bond that began with Kibo had become the heartbeat of their shared world. One quiet twilight, Leora stood alone on a familiar hill, the same rise where earlier generations had faced lions and sunsets. Her breath came slower now. She knew her long journey was nearing its end. The herd grazed peacefully below, but she had climbed the hill to watch the final colors of the day fade into night. As darkness gathered, a new threat appeared: a pack of wild dogs, fast and clever, drawn by the scent of an aging elephant. They circled silently at first, then grew bolder, snapping at her legs. Leora tried to trumpet, but her voice was faint. Her legs felt heavy. For a brief moment, the old shadow of surrender touched her heart, just as it had touched Kibo so many lifetimes ago. She lowered her head, ears drooping. The wild dogs closed in, their eyes shining in the gathering dark. But the savanna answered once again. Heavy footsteps undered the slope. A group of rhinos led by an old bull named Barak, Thorn's son, charged through the twilight. Their horns gleamed under the rising moon. They formed a protective wall around Leora, stamping and snorting with raw power. The wild dogs scattered in panic, their confident yips turning into frightened yelps as they fled into the night. Leora lifted her trunk slowly and rested it gently on Barak's broad back. In that single touch, generations spoke from the first rescue on the dry riverbed to this final stand under the stars. The impossible had returned one more time. Barak stayed beside her through the night, keeping watch while the herd slept safely below. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, Leora took her last peaceful breath, surrounded by friends who had never forgotten the debt of kindness. The rhinos stood guard until her family arrived to say goodbye. No scavenger dared approach. Liara's passing was mourned, but it was also celebrated. That same evening under sky filled with stars, the elephants and rhinos gathered in a wide clearing. The young ones stood close as the elders spoke. Barak, the old rhino, stepped forward and touched his horn to the ground where Liara had stood. "She carried the flame of Kibo," he rumbled softly. "The old elephant who once surrendered to the hyenas taught us that kindness never dies. It lives in every rescue, every shared watering hole, every time we stand together against the darkness." A young elephant calf named Suri Liara's granddaughter listened with wide, shining eyes. When the elders finished, she stepped forward on shaky legs and touched her tiny trunk to Barak's horn, just as her ancestors had done for generations. From that night onward, Suri became the new keeper of the story. Every sunset, she would lead the young of both families to the old hill and tell them the tale. Long ago, our great ancestor Kibo had already given up. The hyenas thought they had won, but one small kindness from years before brought thunder and horns rushing to save him. That same kindness has saved us from lions, fire, floods, pits, rivers, wild dogs, and every shadow that tried to swallow us. It will keep saving us as long as we remember. The calves would trumpet and snort in agreement, their small trunks and horns touching in silent promise. The circle continued, stronger with every new life. Today, deep in the heart of Africa, the elephants and rhinos still walk the golden plains together. They share paths, protect each other's young, and face every challenge as one. Their friendship has become a quiet legend known by many creatures, a living proof that one act of kindness can echo forever. The old elephant who surrendered to the hyenas never truly left. His moment of weakness became the beginning of an unbreakable chain. His single kind act became a river of hope that still flows today. His story became the flame passed from trunk to horn, from generation to generation. So if life ever brings to a moment where you feel surrounded, tired, or ready to surrender, remember Kibo. Hold on a little longer. Stay kind, even when it seems small. Help when you can, because that kindness is already moving through time, waiting for the day you need it most. It may arrive with heavy footsteps and thunder in its heart. It may look nothing like you imagined, but it will come, and the impossible will happen once again. The circle of kindness is eternal. It started with one old elephant on a dry riverbed long ago, and it will keep turning as long as hearts remember how to care. This is not just a story of survival. It is a promise that hope still walks the savanna, and it will never stop. Many more seasons turned, and the African savanna continued its timeless dance of life and renewal. The story of the old elephant who surrendered to the hyenas had become woven into the very soul of the land. It was told not only by elephants and rhinos, but by every creature that roamed the golden plains, from the tallest giraffe to the smallest dung beetle. It had grown beyond a single rescue into a living truth that guided how animals treated one another. On a clear, peaceful morning, a young elephant named Suri, now grown into a strong and wise young matriarch, led her herd and their rhino companions toward a new horizon. The group moved together as one family, their footsteps creating a gentle rhythm across the grass. Suri carried the flame of memory in her heart, just as her mother Lara and all the generations before her had done. As they reached the top of a wide, sunlit ridge, Suri stopped and looked out over the endless savanna. The land stretched far into the distance, rivers sparkling, acacia trees standing tall, and herds of every kind moving freely under the bright sky. For a moment, she felt the full weight of the story she carried. She turned to the young ones gathered around her, elephant calves with flapping ears and rhino calves with small, sharp horns. Her voice was calm and warm as she spoke the final words of the legend. Long ago, our ancestor Kibo stood alone on a dry riverbed. He had already surrendered to the hyenas. He thought his time was finished and the laughter of the pack would be the last sound he heard. But because he once showed kindness to a small rhino when no one else was watching, the impossible happened. Thunder came on 4 powerful legs. Help arrived from the most unexpected friends. And that single act of kindness has kept returning through droughts, fires, lions, floods, traps, wild dogs, and every dark moment that tried to end us. Suri gently touched her trunk to the horn of a young rhino standing beside her. That kindness created a bond stronger than any tusk or horn. It taught us that true strength is not only in muscles or size. True strength is in remembering who helped you and being ready to help in return, even generations later. The young ones listened in silence, their eyes wide with wonder. Then, if on cue, they all raised their trunks and horns together in a quiet salute to the past and the future. Suri looked out across the horizon once more and smiled. The old elephant who surrendered never truly disappeared. His story became our promise. As long as we keep this flame alive, as long as we choose kindness over forgetting, the impossible will keep happening. Help will come when we need it most. Friendship will rise like thunder when darkness closes in. She took a deep breath, her voice carrying clearly on the morning breeze. So never surrender too quickly when the hyenas laugh. Never forget a single act of kindness, because one day, when you feel weakest, that kindness will charge back to you, perhaps on heavy feet, with horns held high, turning certain defeat into a brand new dawn. As the sun rose higher, painting the savanna in warm gold, the combined herd began to move forward again. Elephants and rhinos walked side by side toward the endless horizon, protecting one another, sharing every watering hole, and living the legend with every step. The circle of kindness had not ended. It had simply grown wider, stronger, and more beautiful with every new generation. And somewhere, in the quiet heart of Africa, the wind still carries the story of the old elephant who surrendered to the hyenas. But then the impossible happened. It will keep happening, as long as hearts remember to care. The end.